Hi, kids. Let's learn the names of all the animals from A to Z together. Are you ready? Let's go.
A for alligator, A for ant, A for alligator, A for ant. B for bear, B for baboon, ba. B for bear, B for baboon. C for camel, C for cow, ka. C for camel, C for cow. D for dog, D for donkey, da. D for dog, D for donkey. E for elephant, E for eland, E for elephant, E for eland. F for fox, F for ferret, F for fox, F for ferret. G for goat, G for giraffe, G for goat, G for giraffe. H for hyena, H for horse, H for hyena, H for horse. I for impala, I for Ibex, I for impala, I for Ibex. J for jaguar, J for jackal, ja. J for jaguar, J for jackal. K for kangaroo, K for cob, ka. K for kangaroo, K for cob. L for lion, L for langur, la. L for lion, L for langur. M for monkey, M for Markhor, ma. M for monkey, M for Markhor. N for nyala, N for Numbat, na. M for nyala, N for Numbat. O for ox, O for ocelot, O for ox, O for ocelot. P for panther, P for Puma, P for panther, P for Puma. Q for quagga, Q for quail, ka. Q for quagga, Q for quail. R for rhinoceros, R for rabbit, ra. R for rhinoceros, R for rabbit. S for sheep, S for seal, sa. S for sheep, S for seal. T for tiger, T for ta. T for tiger, T for tur. U for uriel, U for uakari, for uriel, U for uakari. V for vicuña, V for viper, V for vicuña, V for viper. W for wolf, W for wolverine, Wolf for wolverine. X for Holtzcombe, X for Harris, X for Holtzcombe, X for arrows. Y for yak, Y for yearling, yeah. Y for yak, Y for yearling.